Good evening. Welcome, welcome, welcome. I am Luz Nazario. I'm so glad that you are here tonight. We are doing our book room. We're doing a fireside chat. Hello, Danai. How are you?
Hello, good evening. I'm great. How are you?
Good, good, good. It's been a while since we've had a room on. We have we have an author coming in. Several authors actually coming in to share about this book, Sister Armor, Healing in Community. So, do you have any idea what this could be about? I mean, I know it's about, but I just wanted to get you involved. And what do you think it's about?
Well, based on the title, it's about sisterhood and building community. But I will tell you, I must have been living under a rock because I literally just learned about this today. And as a matter of fact, Wendy's here. I messaged her like 5 minutes ago on Instagram asking her where I can buy the book because I've just been under a rock, and I'm super excited to be here. I'm super excited to learn about the book, meet the authors, and get myself a copy.
Awesome. And the thing is, this is if I'm not mistaken, this book has been early June, or believe mid June, it was published. And, we took a hiatus break, and now we're back, and we're excited to start with this. I want to welcome Wendy, who's not only part of the Amigos Club, or part of our family, but we also have Tiffany and we have Mary, which are contributing writers to this piece. Also, my dear friend Dali is up here. Dali, we're back at it. How are you?
I know I'm excited to be back. Woo woo! And I'm excited about Wendy's book.
Uh,
Hi,
hey,
everyone. Hey, how are you guys?
hey, girl. So glad that you're here, helping us kick off our I guess our restart of the book room. How are you doing?
I'm great. I'm great. I'm excited to be here with my co-authors. I just brought up Tiffany and Mary and Haley, and I think we might have one other person coming through, but we are excited to be here with you guys. Sister Armor is a project that Tiffany led and has just been heroically pulling us together as 25 women sharing stories of healing. So I'll let Tiffany talk a little bit more about the project and we'll get started with
Okay.
whatever your questions are.
Sure, sure. Hold on one moment. Let me do a quick housekeeping of what we have going on. So, ladies, welcome. For we have replays on, and for anyone that's listening at a later date, you are inside the Amigos Club, which is one of the largest Latino, Latina, Latinx clubs on the app. I would like, if you can, go ahead, share this room. If you look at the bottom, you have a little box with an arrow there. Go ahead, share the room. You can invite some people in. We would love to. We're going to first start speaking with the ladies. We'll have them introduce themselves, share their experience. We do have some questions for you ladies. And make sure, mi gente, that if you're not able to come up at some point in time when we do a Q&A, or where we open it up to the audience for Q&A, you can put your questions in the chat, which is basically the little speech bubble that is going to be to the far left at the bottom. Así que let's not delay anymore. I want to welcome everyone here. So we, here in the Amigos Book Room, we strive to read, tell people about, and have discussions about books written by authors, women, men, Latino, any author that is basically bringing in, that is tapping into the community, right? So today, like I said, we have the authors from Sister Armor, Healing in Community. It's written by a collaboration of female authors who share life experiences and celebrate the life they enjoy as a result of doing the work in healing. So I have Wendy Veloz, I have Tiffany Barner, Haley Varney, Kelby McCumber, Mary Blanchard. Am I missing anyone? Is there any of you ladies in the audience? Please, if you are, and we didn't bring you up, please let us know. We'll be glad to bring you up. And then to my right here, I have the jefa of Amigos. I'm so glad she's here with us. And my partner in this room is Dali Rivera, and she is right below us. So what we could do, we could have a brief introduction, and we could also have what we call, we don't have to do PTR because I think that could go on, but if there's a question that we ask or something that you would like to share, please, this is, like a fireside chat. We're chilling at home, we're talking. And so I am going to go ahead and hand the mic over to Tiffany. Tiffany, welcome. How are you?
Hello, good evening. This is a real honor. Thank you for holding space in this capacity for us authors, for these brilliant books. It's really phenomenal and greatly appreciated. So Sister Armor Healing in Community. Wow, there is this deep healing when we get to share our stories. We're we're literally just witnessed, we're seen, and then the story itself becomes armor, which ends up, it holds us, it sustains us, and it allows us to, uh, gosh, organize the magnitude of our experience, and it puts it into meaning. And when we get to share our truths that contain the struggles and the sadness and the fear, um, and have our truth received and validated by other women, by other individuals, it is an opportunity for us to heal. And this is Sister Armor. This is healing in community. We are allowing one another to see and hear one another in this book. And throughout this entire process, all of us have found the importance of also leaning in to others' stories, in order to see ourselves, and as well as in order to embrace our own journey. So this is just an incredible opportunity to continue that voice, to continue that path of healing, to continue to being witnessed and allowing ourselves to witness others. So thank you again. Just a great heart of gratitude to you.
No, our pleasure. Thank you for being here. Mary, Haley, tell us a little bit about you. Who are you?
Hi, I'm Mary Blanchard. And so I wrote chapter 9 in this book. It's called Living an Essential Life, Stepping into Your Natural Self. And so I take you on my journey from being a little kid and all those messages of not feeling good enough and not being seen. So I go on my journey to finding my own natural solutions and stepping into my natural self through using pure essential oils and the forest. So that's a little bit about my chapter.
Hi, I'm Hayley Verney. I wrote chapter 18, which was in the book Illuminate, Fuck Being Perfect. A little bit about me. I'm a life coach, change manager, and yoga teacher. I'm just introducing myself. Thank you.
No, thank you. And Wendy, tell everyone who you are.
Yeah, hi, everyone. So I'm Wendy Velos, and I'm a coach for entrepreneurs who have a socially conscious mission through their business or their nonprofit and are trying to make a difference and change the world. And I wrote chapter 21, and it was the story of me losing my job and starting my business. And it's called it's called Now What? A Brown Girl's Guide to Breaking Free. And it's exploring from a Latina's perspective some of the issues that make it difficult for us to think about losing our job or leaving a job so that we can follow our passion. So that's really what the story, my part of the story is about. But I also just love, being here in community and following what all everybody has to offer in this book. It's such a great book with a lot of diverse stories and lived experience, and it's been really fun and rich to be part of it. So thanks for being here.
No, our pleasure to have you ladies here. Now, my question is, one of my questions is, what is a healing community, right? Because at first I'm thinking, okay, is this sort of like a kibbutz? Is this, what do you guys, what do you ladies understand of that? And why is that important?
Well, I'm happy to speak on this. So, Sister Armor was quite literally a. I wrote chapter one. I'm the lead author of this book, and it was Sister Armor itself was birthed from a dear friend of mine who gifted me this cardigan. And the day I happened to wear that cardigan, I experienced a pivotal life event, and that tag was birthed, Sister Armor, Healing in Community. And when another woman's story becomes a mirror reflecting a self in a way we haven't allowed ourselves to be seen before, um, we are able to invite in our own hope, our own inspiration. And so I knew that this mission this mission of writing the book, Sister Armor, had to be done with more voices than just my own. And so that's where the healing in community came from. It came from all of us coming together and allowing ourselves to be brave enough to be seen as well as see others in sharing our stories.
I love that. Luz, can I jump in and ask a question?
Of course, of course. You jump in. Anyone want to ask a question? Go ahead.
Awesome. Well, welcome, ladies, to this chat. I'm super excited to learn about this book and learn about your journey in writing this book. I'd love to know, how did this come about? Like, what was the catalyst for saying, "Hey, we're going to write a book, and it's going to be named Sister Armor"? Can you tell us a little bit about the backstory behind the book?
Sure. So, uh, so that's kind of what I just explained about that day that I wore my armor, that cardigan that who I call my sister friend, my best friend, gifted me. And when I put that cardigan on, it really felt like armor. I felt held, I felt protected, and that was the day that I was wearing that cardigan when I had that great life event, and I, in reflection, was like, wait, I was wearing my sister armor, that silly cardigan, and that's really what helped me feel held. And that was the spark, the catalyst that lit my path on fire. And from there, it grew into wanting to connect more and more with other women who are experiencing spiritual awakenings, who are experiencing claiming themselves, owning themselves, forgiving themselves, allowing themselves to be seen as who they are. And so over the past 5 years, that drumbeat has just kept going, and it just got really loud to the point where I knew that this needed to be spoken and connected with more than one voice, more than one experience. And then that's when I had the great opportunity of signing on with Brave Healer Productions, who is a hybrid publishing house. And over the past year, I had the opportunity to sit with nearly 40 self-identifying women, and 25 of them said, yes, I would love to be a part of this mission, this intention, and share my story and allow my story to lift others up. And so here we have this beautiful collaborative artwork, this fantastic book, Sister Armor.
This is Mary. I'll add to that on how I came into the project. I have a friend who had lead authored another book called Sacred Spaces, and she introduced me to Tiffany, but she started out by just sending me a message saying, "Do you have any interest in writing a chapter?" And when I saw the message, it immediately brought up in me all of my insecurities. Immediately, I was like, "Oh, I'm not good enough for that. I can't do that. I don't have a bio. Like, I would get laughed at." And as soon as I heard those thoughts coming in my mind, I messaged her back right away. Yes, I'm interested. Like I had to jump in because I realized that I had done so much healing, but yet something as simple as this little question brought up all of these fears for me. And so when I met Tiffany, I just felt like this was such a beautiful container that I would be held and could go through this process. And in being able to write my story, even though I'd gone through so much healing, I realized that I had a process. And it's really just been the most beautiful experience of getting to share my story and people receiving it with such love and kindness. And it's just really opened up a whole new world to me. So I'm so appreciative of this project. It's really been amazing. And so thank you, Tiffany. I really appreciate you bringing me on board for this.
Yeah, I'll share a little bit too. My background is I had co-written in another book called Save Your Life, Find Your Voice, Save Your Life with Tiffany, and also a lovely group of women. And I just want to add here, because I see there are some males also in the chat in the room, is that even though the book is called Sister Armor and it is written by a whole lot of ladies, I do know that there's also stories for transcendent men as well. As I know that there's a book coming out through Brave Healers shortly soon on that. But it's just to say that we all go through life having certain wounds, and we all are healers in our own way. And by sharing our story, by sharing our pain, by sharing our transformation, that we can heal in community, because there's so much more emphasis about being in community, living in community, healing in community. And so for me, I remember, as going back to being part of another book that I'd written with Tiffany, there was a lady that did a Jen, a, a session with us where she connected with our ancestors with us, and she cleared away certain ancestral patterning. And at the end, she had said to Tiffany, Tiffany, there are X amount of your ancestors standing with you, and may you lead a group of women through their fears. And I remember looking at Tiffany and thinking, wow, I would like to work with her further. And about a week later, Tiffany inboxes me, hey, I've got this new book that I'm going to co-lead. Would you like to co-write in it? And it was just such a beautiful synchronistic moment for me. And I just knew that I had to be part of this collective of authors, to share my story, just basically how I transitioned out of corporate into being self-employed.
Ladies, thank you so much for sharing. If you don't mind, Luz, I'm going to jump in and ask a question, because one of the things that I did was that I went to the reviews online, and they're just so good. Just reading them immediately convinced me, yes, this is definitely something that I want to read. And one of them that I love, and I just want to read it out for people to just get an idea. It says, "Ever feel alone? That feeling of hopelessness can be heartbreaking, but is usually a numbing sadness that your journey is unrelatable. This collection of stories is a cooling ointment to those feelings. A variety of women from all different walks of life sharing their pain, their journey, and their sense of peace. It's nice to read the experiences of these women, to know your sadness and fear is understood by others, and more importantly, to have the courage to face your own journeys, knowing it's possible. You do have people that can relate and can support you along the way. A very good read, inspirational, soft, not preachy, and full of love and reminders to be your best self." Another one mentioned that there are a lot of really good exercises that you provide. So, I mean, it just sounds really good because I think that, a lot of us do know that our friends are there, that our sisters are there for us, but there's part of us that feel sometimes that we might be judged. And I think that's where we stop ourselves from reaching out to our sisters and asking for help or just to be heard, right? And becoming vulnerable. So, can you share a little bit about the exercises, or like what else we can expect from the stories? Thank you.
Yeah, I can talk a little bit about that. When we first were thinking about the book and our chapters and the structures, there was this want for there to be a prescription at the end of our chapters to kind of, like you're saying, give people homework or something to walk away from. And I think each chapter does it sort of differently, and there is homework that you learn about as you read the person's story. And what I offered in my chapter, the way I formatted it, was sort of three core lessons that were not overtly described earlier in the chapter that I really wanted people to take away and to explore how it would resonate within their experience. And although one of them is particularly focused on being a woman of color, I think there's a lot of things that people can take away from those lessons. And so each of us, I think, did exactly what you're talking about in a different way. And as you go through the different chapters, I know that I've just been able to connect with the other women's stories of how many women transitioned from one part of their life into another through a job transition, but came out looking for their purpose or finding their purpose. And I realized like Tiffany's story is there, Haley's story is in that same boat. And as we kind of fall through these stories, I think you hear each person does their road a little different. And what you were saying, Dali, about people being able to identify, because there are 25 different ways you could identify with the authors, you do almost find several stories that resonate really closely with you, but you might find that several parts of different stories resonate really closely with you. And I think that's the power in the collective of the book that Tiffany was able to put together people who maybe had similar life experiences, but just traversed it completely differently, but still came out in a very beautiful space. And I think that's one of the things that, as I've dug more and more into the chapters, I've been able to learn different things from each of those life experiences.
Man, I mean, seriously, I think we can all here do a chapter, right? So let me see if I understood this correctly. Tiffany, you said that you reached out to 40, did I get that right? 40 people?
Yes, yes, I had the opportunity to sit with 40 different individuals.
Okay, so all right, so 40, and you have 25 stories?
Yes, a total
How
of
did you
25.
pick? All right, so I'm thinking like, oh my gosh, how did she narrow it down? How did she get to this point? Like, okay, I only want 25. I like these 25. What was that process like? Because I'm like, I'm bearing my soul to you, and you're like, nah, girl, we don't want your story now. Maybe the next one. What was that like?
Oh, that makes me giggle because it certainly was not that. It actually, that picking, if you will, for maybe a lack of better words, happened intuitively before I met with an individual. So a lot of times I would sit in meditation and ask for guidance. Or sometimes, well, let me just start and say when I set out to do this project, this collaborative project, I just knew exactly. I thought I had it. I thought I had it in the bag. I was like, oh, definitely these, 24 individuals with myself included, the all 25 chapters are set. This is easy peasy. And it really wasn't that at all. I was really surprised. A lot of individuals that I thought would be right on board and aligned, they were just absolutely consumed in fear, or say their schedule didn't work, or they weren't prepared to share their story in a condensed version, and have the structure of just one chapter. um, Others were just completely not aligned, or there are so many like varying things came up. But it was interesting, like I had the opportunity to meet Mary in this, which was such a beautiful alignment. So there were many instances where I just had to like rip my heart open and say, okay, universe, I surrender, I trust you, and I know the individuals who are meant to be a part of this project will just quite literally align. And I had the high honor of working with Haley and Wendy before, and they were just those no brainers where it was like, oh, these individuals are such brilliant women. So it totally made sense, and they felt the alignment themselves. So yeah, each connection was a little bit different. Some really surprised me, and some felt really obvious. But it wasn't more. It was a smooth process ultimately at the end.
Oh, that's good to know because I was kind of saying, I was like, oh my goodness, how did you pick? But here's another thing I wanted to know. Ladies, anybody could answer. How did writing your chapter change you, right? Because we all start with a story. There's something that you've experienced that you want to share. And as Tiffany said, she kind of was intuitive. There was some type of alignment. And once you got that on paper, once you got that down, how did you was this therapeutic for you? Was this like I release it, I'm better? What was that like for each one of you?
For me, the story that I wrote, in a nutshell, because this my story is about me transitioning from one role to another. And as I wrote my story, I started to go a little bit deeper into some of my beliefs, some of my self-limiting beliefs, but also head on with my fear of uncertainty, my self-doubt, procrastination, fear of failure, perfectionism, and then to apply, to apply what I call a growth mindset, where I would come to a position when I was writing to say, oh, actually, I don't think that I'm capable. And I would flip that over as I was writing and go, but why don't you apply a growth mindset where you are learning? And so for me, that's what I got at this story, this particular time is, and I still use that today when I feel that I'm stuck. I go, why am I stuck? Oh, because I think that I'm not capable, but I am capable. So that's just a little bit of a story or a little bit of insight into in terms of how my story, how it shifted for me, especially going through a transition. Because when you go through a transition, you are ultimately in a place where you've been repeating patterns of what you know, and now you're going into the unknown, a place that you haven't been before. And so often we stand in that place going, am I capable? Can I? Do I trust myself enough? Yeah.
Haley, I really love how you just expressed that. Um, so, if I may add to that, when I did have the opportunity to sit with others and invite them to this project, for most of them, there was this initial, most definitely, I'm ready to do this. This feels right. This is an alignment. And then the moment that we have to bring ourselves down into the seat and put ourselves in front of our laptop on this, blank document and say, okay, now I have to articulate it. Now I have to present it. Now I have to really, slab of heart kind of stuff out to the entire universe. Whoa, wait a second. Like this, it becomes even just the next level of of a personal transformation. It becomes an opportunity where we are suddenly connecting with deeper aspects of ourselves, and as we ask ourselves to reflect, which then continues to align us with an unlimited self. And when we allow ourselves to do that, we're then forever evolving and shifting and morphing into our truth, into deeper aspects of our truth. And so I will say that the publisher did. I asked permission if we could have 27, because there were actually 27 individuals who were excited and allowing themselves to do this. And ultimately, two authors, the publisher said, "Okay, we can cap it at 27, not one, not one more." And I was in such gratitude for that. But we had two authors who said, whoa, whoa, wait a second. I'm actually not ready to reveal myself like this. I'm not ready for my friends and family and my loved ones, possibly my colleagues, people who don't even know me, to read my story, to see my truths. That's just far too frightening. Um, and so it's one thing to experience it, and then it's another thing to actually sit down and put it in our journal, or then put it into a book that's going to be published and that's going to be listed as a bestseller on Amazon. So this is really transformative work.
Now, here's a question I have. Now, you're as part of this, right? Because we need to set up our routines. We need to get this process. And as you were saying, this one lady said she was not ready to have or to share this. So, in doing this, what did your day of life look like when you were working on your writing, on your chapter, on putting this baby together? Any of you may answer.
Hi, this is Mary.
Oh, go ahead, Mary.
Okay, thanks. I was just going to say, as I sat down to write, I felt myself writing about every perceived wrong I had received in life, and thinking like, everybody needed to know. And as I wrote all of these out, I looked at them and was just like, okay, I don't even care about this anymore. Like these are, nobody is to blame in any of this stuff. I know it was just all ego out there, just on the page. And so I had to kind of write all through that to kind of get down in the layers. And what was really at the heart of mine was something that I had really kept very shameful to me. And my chapter starts with a scene of myself as a child with a family gathering, and all the adults are giving hugs. And one of my relatives gives me a hug and looks at me and says, "You'd be so pretty if you lost weight." And I held on to that forever. And I perceived from that I was unlovable and that I wasn't good enough. And um, I kept that in the darkness. And so when I was able to write all of this out and then ask other people to read it to see if there is a story, to see, if I should change the order of something or explain something more, it kind of just released it for me. And so by the time that the book was published, I felt such gratitude for being able to share all of this. And I made a post afterwards because I just received so much love. And I made a post that, I'd always kept myself very hidden because I would never live in vulnerability. And so in stepping out of this, I not only opened my door, but it had been locked. It was tight. It was dead bolted. And so when I opened up that door, there was just these buckets of love, and I realized they'd been sitting there all along. So to be able to sit and write through this process and, edit it, and it just was so healing. And the healing just kept multiplying as we went along. So for me, it was really a cathartic experience. And I just am so appreciative for it.
Um, Thank you so much for sharing that. I can imagine the cathartic part of that because I've done it myself. It's kind of like journaling. I mean, only this is a much bigger scale. But what have you each learned about yourselves from this project?
Yeah, I actually wanted to answer Luz's question, but I'll answer yours too, Lali. Yeah, so I think the writing of it, like Mary was saying, was really something that when we went to approach it, we actually hadn't been prepped very much for what we were trying to share, and there really wasn't a whole lot of discussion about, cohesion of the stories, or, what kind of story are you going to put in this book, and who's going to do what or whatever. Like there was no coordination on that level across all the authors. It was come as you are, bring the story you want to share, and whatever you're compelled to share in the format that you're compelled to share it, and be as raw and authentic as you want to be. And I appreciated that guidance from Tiffany because I think that it was really helpful for everyone to then be able to open themselves up to the best idea for what they wanted to present and how that could help others. And then when we went to actually write our stories individually, we all had to go through our own process of, what healing have we done, and where are we sharing something that's worth valuable, life lessons for somebody else to have a shortcut or have the ability to see another way to do something than what they currently see in their situation. And I think for me, when I was thinking about what story to share, because I have so many stories to share, I knew that this would just be part of a journey of writing where I would be publishing increasingly more vulnerably my story. And this would just be a first sort of step. And I was excited to take it almost like in a safe way with other people, but also with Tiffany, who happens to be my Reiki master, to be able to take it as part of her community and have this support. And so when I did go to write the story of a very vulnerable time in my life of losing my job, I just did it in the way that it came out. I may literally sat at my kitchen counter and wrote it all out in an hour, cried, and then was like, okay, I'm done with that. Like, what about my day? And then I came back to it. And Rodrigo, actually, who's in the room, grateful to you, buddy, for reading it. And he was like, this is good. Here's some small edits. And then I sent it to a few other people, and they gave me some edits. And we probably went with the actual editors, back and forth 3 or 4 times, but pretty much the raw version of what you sent that first time was what was published. And I think that is something that can be very scary for people if you're not ready to tell your story. And also you feel like you need to have a whole bunch of editing, or you need to polish the story until you can share it. This was not what our process was. So I just wanted to make sure to highlight that, because I think working in different ways with different groups and different publishers and different things might happen. But just to be, really transparent, a lot of us, what came out that first draft, we didn't have a whole lot more to edit after that. So it was very from the heart type of writing. And then I think, Dali, your question again, remind me, because I've already forgot what it was, because I wanted to say all of that.
No, thank you so much for sharing about that. My question was, what did you learn the most about yourselves throughout this journey writing the book?
Yeah, I did want to answer that too. I think for me, the fact that it was scary to tell your story and then just doing it. I thought people were going to be, with a pitchfork coming to my door, like, that's not how this happened, or, oh no, or like whatever the case may be. And you open up this big can of worms and you let it out there and you're like waiting for something to happen that day. And it doesn't. It like people are just like very like supportive and, oh, this is great. And and you're like, oh, so there is no like weird repercussion that happened when I told my story. And I think that realization in itself, I could have never gotten if I hadn't gone through the experience of it itself. So that was something I think is really important, because before that, I think before you tell your story that publicly, you assume that you say one wrong word and people are going to be coming with like pitchforks, like, you said this in print format and now it's on Amazon. But really, it wasn't that at all. It was the exact opposite, where people were like, hey, how can I support you? Or how can I never would have known that about you, or I wouldn't have heard that from you if we were just in conversation. I really appreciate being able to be part of that journey. So that's what I would say for your question, Vali.
Thank you so much. Wow. Yeah, I think Danai has a question. Go ahead, Danai.
I do. Okay, so I am a huge fan of failure, roadblocks, and obstacles. And I say this because I believe it makes us stronger, and it's part of why women are so incredibly resilient. You know, life is full of obstacles for women, and we overcome them. And so, my question is, what roadblocks, if any, obstacles have you encountered in either the writing or the promotion of the book? And how did you overcome it? And that's open for anybody.
Well, I'll speak about that. Roadblocks for me, I experienced all along the way. So even though I had said yes very eagerly to Tiffany, there are many times that I was very tempted to pull out because I was also just not in a mindset to write and to go into the depths at the time that I had to before I started writing. And then I got COVID close to the time that we had to publish, send our stuff in. So I was forced to sit, not forced, but in a nice way. But I just kept telling myself that it is the fear I'm sitting with. And I gradually worked through fear. But I'm going to talk to this moment. The launching of the book, and we were all interviewed as well by the production house, online Zoom interviews. First time I'm a first time writer, and it was the first time to be interviewed, and then also published live on YouTube. That was very uncomfortable. And even now, as I speak in today's session, it's my first time in a room on Clubhouse and recently on Clubhouse. So I am also currently like even working through one of my fears right now. And even though there is excitement, but there is also a little bit of an increased heartbeat and a little bit of anxiety, you work through it, because you drop into your heart and say, why am I doing this? What was my intention behind my story? What's my intention behind my healing?
Ooh,
I
Haley, I love
love
that.
that. I love that too. Just work through
We
it.
all love that.
Bam. Does anybody else have an obstacle they'd like to share in the process?
Sure, I'll share. This one, this one really hit me like a ton of bricks, and it was during the writing period where all of us authors just had the go ahead, the green light. Okay, everyone go out and write your chapters and go deep with it. And to my surprise, and two fellow authors, um, so how do I say this? So these two individual authors happen to cross paths earlier in their healing experience. The one author was going to her story was about her interaction with this other individual who happened to be an author. So we kind of got into tricky waters where one author's story was about another another author? And how do we honor the individual's story while, say, holding space for a fellow author who is also brave in this process, who is also growing and healing? And so I really found myself as the lead author in this to spearhead this with the highest compassion and integrity for both. And it was most important at the end of the day, even if the other author had chosen to step out of the project. It was most important because this is what Sister Armor is. Sister Armor is speaking up, it is sharing our truth, our experience, what we've endured and lived through. And so it was most important to honor the individual's story and her experience. And thankfully, the other author was able to see that and find healing in this process. And it ended up working out beautifully. But I really had to meet myself back into the roots of the mission, of the intention of Sister Armor.
I am enjoying this conversation. Thank you, ladies, because I'm thinking like, oh, how do I get a chapter? I need to get a chapter in there because I got stories to tell you. But anyway, I want to do a quick reset. I want to thank everybody that is in here, listening, tuning in. We are speaking with the authors, las mujeres, the authors that contributed, that wrote, collaborated for this book, Sister Armor, Healing in Community. And we're asking them questions. Guys, please make sure you go ahead and share this room with others. These ladies are sharing with us the process they've gone through to share these stories. And I like one thing that came up, these prescriptions at the end. Another thing I wanted to ask, well, before I jump in, does anybody have a question, or is there something someone wanted to say and I interrupted? No? Okay. So I'm going to pivot just a bit here. Ladies, I always find that sometimes some people are just better at one thing than they are at the other. So are you more of a reader or a speaker, and what confirms that for you?
I will start with that. I absolutely love to read. I have been a reader my entire life. I find absolute joy in words and how other people express themselves. For me, speaking is something that is very, very new. So, like Kaylee was saying, being a first time author, all of this is new to me, but I am really enjoying speaking also. But at my heart, I really am that reader, and I love reading the words. And but I'm getting comfortable with speaking.
So you don't do audiobooks. You want the handheld book, and smell the pages.
I don't do audiobooks at all. And funny, I had wished that Sister Armor was in an audiobook. So many of my friends said, because I would read my chapter to them to try to gauge their expressions. And so many of them were like, you really need to read this. And I'm like, yeah, we don't have an audiobook. So I don't generally listen to audiobooks. I love feeling the weight of the book and having it in my hand. But I've also converted to reading on my phone. I'll read at any chance I can get.
So I think your friends there planted the idea that this could go audio, right?
I would love that. That would be fantastic.
I think that would be really cool.
Mary, you're a
Agreed.
woman after my own heart. I love, love, love to have a physical copy of a book. I will listen to the audio version, but it doesn't, like, I don't retain. I don't retain it as much as for all of those of you who have experienced me totally ignoring you at some point or not getting what you said. It's because I have ADHD and I don't retain it as well as I retain the book. So I love, love, love having a physical copy of the book. Thank you for saying that. I feel like we're few and far between. How about everybody else? Going back to Luz's question, are you more of a speaker, an orator, or are you more of a reader?
Yeah, I'll hop in. I'm actually making dinner before I have a client call after this, y'all. I'm still working till like almost 10 p.m. tonight. Um, I am much more of a speaker. I have been a public speaker for years and years and hop up in front of several hundred people like no problem. And I think that sometimes that I prefer to write, or I prefer to blog, or I prefer long form writing because it allows me to format my message and edit it in a way that I can't as a speaker. And I've learned, the more that I've learned about myself, and I won't go into my woo woo stuff today, but the more I've learned about human design specifically, I realize that I communicate just without a filter. And as a speaker, that's not always the best way to communicate, but it is just who I am. And I don't necessarily have anything that I have to be ashamed of. It's just how I communicate. And I think as a reader, I've always loved reading and I love books and I love to hold them and like, yeah, actually, I'm the worst one because I'm that doggy ear highlight girl. So you don't want to borrow my books. That's FYI. But I've had to because I move so much. I've had to convert to my Kindle Apple kind of device based reading, and so I'm still bummed about losing all my books that I had to give up in the last couple of years. But I'm grateful that even though we don't have an audio version of Sister Armor, we do have a version that's a Kindle version, and it is still really, really super cheap. So if you do have a Kindle or an e-reader and you want the book, you can go and download it with the link that Luz put above, and you'll be able to read it tonight before you go to bed. So I just wanted to make sure to call out that the link was up there.
I'm definitely more of an audio person. I am dyslexic, so I prefer, and I also like to be on the move. So with audio books and audio things, it's nice for me because I'm able to do things and listen at the same time. And as Wendy said, I do enjoy writing as well, but because I know that I can edit it and re-edit it. And what was the other question? I prefer being a speaker. I through the chapters that I've written in and through coaching, I definitely am becoming more of a speaker as I learn to find my voice and also just be open to whatever comes into me. So to just trust myself and to be okay with the sound of my voice and with my message.
I've become more of an audio of listening to books because I'm doing more things. But Tiffany, I'm throwing it out there, just throwing it out there. I think it would be great to have everyone read their own chapter because I don't know, it just brings that. Mary, I could relate to your story, right? Because this is going to lead into the next question. You know, you hear someone speaking their story, sharing their story, and you cheer with them, you cry with them. You're like, what the heck? Right? So the question that I'm leading to is, and Mary had mentioned it, what was an early experience where you learned that language had power? Because Mary, when you shared your story, I was like, oh my gosh, I have had that same thing said to me, and it's something that I've been shaking off. But that was, that left a mark. So, ladies, our last question, or if anybody else has a question, what was an early experience where you learned that language had power?
I'll jump in on this one. So I have always channeled divine messages or a higher intelligence. And in my chapter, in chapter one, I write about my experiences as a child and channeling divine intelligence to the adults in my environment and how they ultimately responded and received those messages. And a lot of the messages lifted individuals, and the messages were received, and it provided something for the individual who received it. And in a lot of other ways, it crippled um, the adults who were receiving the messages, and they completely shut it down and away. But in my chapter, I write about my experience in sharing these messages and how some were received, but ultimately how, because I was a child, the messages were ultimately dismissed. And so, as a child who was a channel, who was providing just brilliance and beauty as a channel, it was being turned away because I was a child. So that was an interesting experience of, directly being shunned because of age. And so essentially the messages were denied.
For me, I think I also grew up in an era where children were seen more than heard. So we didn't really talk that much. There wasn't really that much need. But I did always feel that I had a strong presence, but didn't always voice what I had to say. That I could keep quiet, and what I thought and felt, I learned to express through my energy.
For me, I have always been curious. As a child, I was curious about every single thing. I am still curious about every single thing. I love to know how things work and why. And I am sure that was really trying for my mom. Um, but I didn't find out why until I was in my mid 20s. And my mom and I were on a trip with my best friend and her best friend, who were mother and daughter also. And we were sharing a hotel room, and my mom put a pea drop of toothpaste on her toothbrush. And when I saw that, I was like, wow, why do you do that? Because I load the whole toothbrush head with the toothpaste. And I thought, I learned how to brush my teeth from you. How is it that you do it so differently? But I just asked her, why do you do that? And she said to me, are you saying I don't know how to brush my teeth? Are you calling me stupid? And it really struck me of, no, I'm just curious. Why would you ever think I would call you stupid? Like, it was so far beyond my realm, but it suddenly made sense of why every time I asked a question, my mom felt challenged. And so I suddenly realized that my little simple questions, just of curiosity, were very triggering to her, and it let me see things in a completely different light.
I so appreciate how you just articulated that, Mary, because I had a difficult time articulating mine. And it squashes the curiosity. It squashes the innate medicine. It squashes who we are. Our truth is just that judgment or being attacked by our simplicities, just our innocence, right? And that's ultimately what's molding us,
Right.
forming us, shaping us.
Yeah, it is a strong reminder of something so simple can be such a huge trigger. And I had no idea my mother all these years thought I was challenging her and calling her stupid. when I was just coming at it of a place of innocence and curiosity. And she couldn't feel that. She just felt judged.
which is a clear representation of her own unhealed trauma, just translating into how she's re- reacting to just your innate self.
Oh, definitely, because that came
Yeah,
from her mother. And her
right.
mother would say that um, I said something very innocent to my grandmother one time, and she responded in, "Are you calling me stupid?" I
Yeah.
should have clued in back then when I was a child, but I just thought it was bizarre.
Yeah. Yeah. And there are several chapters throughout the book that speak about this generational trauma, this, new ancestors, this healing from our inherited patterns, trauma and patterns, our healing.
Yes.
Y-
Yes.
Yeah,
Have to get the whole book.
no, no. And the thing is, as you were talking about, these generational, I was thinking that I was like, it's true how, this just continues. And then we come into a group of like-minded or people that have shared a similar experience and we realize what it is, right? What's been going on. I am so thankful, ladies, that you came in. Wendy, Mama, it has been our pleasure to have you here sharing this with us. Ladies, we're going to start wrapping up. Any final thoughts before we go ahead and close up? And how can we support you besides people, mi gente? The link is at the top. Okay, so there should no be excuse. There should be no excuse whatsoever that you cannot go ahead and get your book. And I think, Wendy, you said Kindle was
The Kindle's still up for, I think it's 199 or
okay.
299. I can't remember. And then the hardback, I mean the paperback is $22 on the link, and then each of us have various signed copies we can send you and stuff. So if you do want a signed copy, reach out to us. But the other thing I was going to mention, Luz, you were talking about the generational trauma really quickly before we end. That was something that I put into my chapter because I wanted people to understand that specifically Latinos have this pattern of money trauma that we've grown up with that prevents us from doing different things in our lives, and we don't realize it. And one of the things that, I think holds a lot of people back is this fear of not having a job or not having a paycheck every 2 weeks or not having a stable income because we came from houses and homes and backgrounds where there was an unstable income or there was a sense of lack or there was a sense of needing to work in a job you don't like for pay that is not as much as you deserve and doesn't equate to your wealth or your future legacy. And I think that sometimes we forget that those patterns are historically part of who we are, and we have to super duper step out and break out of that pattern in order to move past it and to have the generational wealth and health that we seek. And a lot of the time, particularly when you're talking about Latino families, from the outside, those who are stepping out, it looks really weird to them because they're still stuck in that old pattern of the money trauma and the lack and the space of where we grew up. And so sometimes, it can feel uncomfortable when you do take that step and do something a little bit different because you came from the same place these other folks did, and people are like, well, why you acted different now? All of a sudden you went to the Ivy League and now you're trying to start your own business, and now you can't just go have a job, right? And I think that it's important for us to talk about those things in the greater context of, yes, that's an applicable lesson to a lot of people, but also in the specific context of people of color who come from these households that are generationally financially unstable. It's really, really important for us to support people who are breaking out and doing things differently so that we can make sure that all of the community is supporting breaking that generational trauma. So that's it.
Yes, girl. And I was thinking over here, Encanto, the John Encanto and the generational trauma. All right. So, mi gente, I want to thank you all for coming in. Ladies, Tiffany, Mary, Haley, bienvenida. Thank you for coming. You are quite welcome here. Haley, I don't know, did you want to say something before we close up?
I did just want to add on in terms of language and generational gap, just feel called to share that as well as we also all brought up with certain language in our families, but also with certain religious or spiritual beliefs. And I find as through the generations, language and beliefs are starting to kind of merge and come together. So the book also shares a variety, all the stories also share a variety of different types of healing. So there's energy management healing, there's Reiki, there's channeling. Some of those healing practices may not be appealing to everybody, but as you read through the stories, you can actually see how alternative healing practices are being used more and more. And like, just for me, even in one of the books that I wrote, I was like, wow, there's a reverend here who owns a church, who's running a church, but she's still practicing with channeling, because where I come from in South Africa and a lot of the communities, sometimes the different dogmas of religions, they won't really practice alternative healing. And so for me, it was really nice to see the integration of different cultures, healing practices, and beliefs come in together.
Oh, thank you for sharing that. Thank you for staying awake and being with us um, to promote the book and your chapter. Um, Ladies and gentlemen, make sure you check out what we have coming up in the rooms in Amigos. We've had here the collaboration of the authors from Sister Armor Healing Community. Make sure you check also the link at the top, right? I still have it there. If you have any questions, please feel free to contact any of these ladies. Go ahead, give them a follow. And my people, click on the little greenhouse above Wendy's head so you can stay tuned to more of our rooms that we have in Amigos. Danai, Dali, thank you, ladies. Thank you, chicas, for coming in. Wendy and Tiffany, Mary, Haley. Nuestra casa es su casa. Our house is your house. Thank you for being here. Y mi gente, gracias por pasar el tiempo con nosotros. Dali, Danai, anything you want to say before we close up?
Yes, thank you, ladies. I got my book. I can't wait to read it. Thank you for joining us.
I know I just got mine too. So thank you so much. It's a pleasure hearing your insights and just hearing directly about like the labor of love that you put into it. Thank you.
Thank you all so much for holding space for this. It's really been an absolute honor. So, heart of gratitude.
It's been our pleasure. Bueno, mi gente, colorín colorado, este cuento se ha acabado. You ladies, have a good night. Everyone, take care. Bye.
Good night.
Bye.
Thanks. Bye, guys.
Thank you.